up to the big announcement, but merger of Dena and Vijaya into BOB. Chances are it's BOB that will prevail because it's the largest bank. Dena is just about 1 lakh crore in terms of deposits, but Bank of Baroda is 5 lakh crore, I think, in terms of deposits.
Almost 10 lakh crores in terms of total business. And yes,
total business. Yeah, that would be deposits and advances. In terms of deposits, it would be at least 5 lakh crore. And therefore, that will be the one that will prevail. Vijaya is a good bank, which has been showing falling NPAs. And I think its net NPA is about 4%. So that would be a strength. It's in fact stronger than even Bank of Baroda. But Dena Bank is the one that both of them will have to support. And that's the one which will make investors in Bank of Baroda squirm for the moment. Dena Bank comes with net NPAs of 11% and gross NPAs of 22.5%, actually nearly 23%, 22.7%. So that's the big one which Bank of Baroda investors will have to swallow. Let's get to our experts. Or you would add something?
Well, you know, in terms of the entire consolidated entity that will emerge out of this process, you know, the finance minister did give a quick briefing, but, the combined business will make it the third largest, bank in the country. I mean, as you said, Bank of Baroda has to bear the brunt of all of this merger, given it is the largest bank, and Dena Bank has almost 22% of its book.
Will it become larger than ICICI Bank? I mean, SBI would be the largest. I guess ICICI would be the second
largest.
So this one would be perhaps bigger than it would be the third largest bank.
Yeah, it will overtake Punjab National Bank and the likes of others to overtake. But of course, we now have Mr. Ashwin Parekh, Managing Partner at Ashwin Parekh Advisory Services. We'll also be joined by Mr. Sanjeev Bhasin of IIFL and R. Gandhi, former Deputy Governor, Reserve Bank of India.
First, let me go to Sanjeev if he is there. Sanjeev, first up, market reaction?
Well, it will be a positive in the sense that, you have a 3,700 crore market cap of Dena Bank, and it gets merged with a 10 times more market cap of 36,000 on Bank of Baroda, and somewhere in the middle is 7,800, which we think is of Vijaya. So combined, you'll have a 48,000 crore market cap. And I think the synergies seem very, very positive in the longer run. In the shorter run, the government has got away without infusing more capital, and it may have, been the lull in the storm. So I would say the market momentarily will try and balance the three. Okay. But in the longer run, it will create a very, very
Will it be unkind to strong banks? Will markets now perceive strength as a weakness? And BOB is good, Vijaya is good, so they get the gift of having to bear a weak bank. Will the markets be unkind to the stronger banks, Sanjeev?
Well, Lata, even if we took the 7 subsidiaries of State Bank, we knew some of them are, bad fish and some were reasonable, and they all got merged. So I would say that you'll have to take it with a pinch of salt. You've got the positives of Vijaya, and if it's going to be BOB, which will be the, consolidated entity, then you will have to take the little bit poison of Dena.
Does BOB and Vijaya fall tomorrow?
Yes, definitely. And I think the biggest gainer will be definitely Dena Bank.
Okay, well, let me get to Mr. Bakshi, former ED of Bank of Baroda. Today, if you are a Bank of Baroda employee, what will be your thoughts, Mr. Bakshi?
I think it's a very big, bold, and the same very intelligent move to have been done. Okay. We have been hearing of amalgamations of mergers or consolidation in banking industry right from early 2000s. But no proposal could really materialize. State Bank merger is a different ballgame, and that also happened very recently. Now, the main thing was, do we merge 5 banks together? Do we merge only 2? And which banks we choose? So they have chosen them very intelligently. Dena and Bank of Baroda both are Gujarat or Bombay side-based banks. So they have got branch network. They will offer a lot of scope for consolidation of branches and therefore efficiency of operation. They can cut expenditure by that and render good service. Vijaya Bank will offer further stronger footprints in the south, which will strengthen the Bank of Baroda's footprints or the emerged entities' footprints in south. Vijaya Bank had slightly better NPA and capital ratios. Dena Bank had adverse. So combined entity has more or less similar to Bank of Baroda's existing ratios. So that is where I say it's a very intelligent move to have been done, merging 2 very smaller banks with a larger bank. IT platform is the same, which gives them a good startup. Vijaya Bank
IT platform is similar for all the three banks?
That's what the
DFS.
announcement DFS secretary said. That means all are using perhaps Finacle, and therefore that makes, because for integration you have to have the same IT platform. That was of course you can always convert, but that means another complication.
Okay.
So it's a very intelligent thing done. Right from 2000, I think it's a credit to the government for having been able to call it at this stage. We have been hearing right from the early 2000, there was some mergers were in the discussion, which could not take off. And now that we have been talking, it's a very intelligently chosen combination of banks.
Okay, so consolidation of two Gujarat-based banks, Dena and Bank of Baroda, would mean a lot of strengths in terms of common branches, which can be, which can be taken off. You can save money on common branches, and Vijaya Bank's geographical diversification.
And Dena Bank, somehow it was meandering at the moment. It was not finding it.
It's been floundering for a very long time, sir. I mean, very long time, Dena Bank. It's been, I think, sick for the last 20 years. But we will wait to see what Kumar makes of it, the current MD and CEO.
You see,
there he is.
One of the things that one of the slides of the financial secretary had was that capital is going to be available for if required. And so with the benefit of scale working in, with greater distribution, with more opportunities for products, for customers, etc., a reasonable assumption is that there will be good opportunity to grow. But it's something that will happen in due course.
So would cash change hands
before taking this?
Sorry?
So would any cash change hands? So would you be...
It's a stock, it's a share ratio. Okay. Now this is the last question and I'm leaving.
Was RBI consulted?
Sorry?
Was RBI consulted before the merger was announced or was advised? And will you need a fresh approval from RBI after the three banks decide to merge?
As the FM said and as the Finance Secretary said, DFS Secretary said, the Reserve Bank of India is on board with respect to the merger. Personally, I'm not privy to the discussion between the government and the Reserve Bank of India.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, that's the word coming in. I want to really ask Sanjeev, how would a Bank of Baroda investor feel tomorrow? But before that, Mr. Gandhi, what are your thoughts? This would have the RBI's blessings, you would think?
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Bakshi's Payo's analysis that it is an intelligent move, because there has always been one end of the expectations was how to deal with bad banks or the banks which are in problem. So if more number of them are brought into merger with a big bank or one bad bank and one good bank, again there will be quite a bit of negative impact could have been there. So this move of one real large bank and one real good bank and one bad bank, that combination works out very nicely. So that way the selection has definitely been chosen very, very thoughtfully. So everybody was expecting merger to happen, and it has happened.
Mr. Gandhi, 1 minute. We actually have Shankar Narayanan also with us, the Managing Director of Vijaya Bank. Mr. Shankar Narayanan, what's the sense you're getting? I mean, will Jaikumar be the MD? What's your chance there?
See, we are now interested in a consolidated entity, then thinking about who is the head of the organization and all that.
Yeah.
The issue is a stronger entity, probably the third largest banking organization in India.
Okay.
With better reach, better capital, and definitely a wide range of products to meet all customers.
Were you in the know of this? Have you already planned some moves?
No, not at all.
You were told today?
Just a few minutes back.
Okay. And you guess your board will not have an issue?
We will take it to the board. Honorable FM also suggested that the board will take a call as far as the amalgamation is concerned.
Soon will the board be meeting, Mr. Narayanan, to approve of this merger with the two other banks?
In another 10 days' time, we will meet and take a call.
Okay. Is there any timeline, exactly as my colleague asked you, is there any timeline for the entire process?
No timeline at all. It will go as per the normal scheduled time which may take. And we have not kept any timeline at all.
Okay.
Probably we will meet with the other two banks and decide how to proceed with.
Okay, but chances are that a Vijaya Bank investor gets BOB shares. Is that how it will work?
No, it may be a combined entity also. These things we have not talked or decided at all.
Okay, but immediately, what are the synergies you see? Of course, the geographical print, you're more present in the south. The other two banks are more north-based, Gujarat-based. Do you anticipate some rationalization of branches? What will be the immediate synergies that come out of the merger?
Not immediately.
Okay.
But any idea of the timeline?
Sorry.
I mean, will it be happening this
Nothing
year?
is discussed at all. First, we will take board's approval for deciding on further course of action.
You'll take the board's approval first.
Yeah.
Okay, but Mr. Shankaran, the question you ask yourself is what all your employees are going to ask themselves. What is going to be my position in the merged entity? Do you ask that question to yourself?
Whatever is the best of the both organizations, they will get that benefit. So there won't be any issues as far as the employee benefits or safety is concerned for all the three merged organizations.
Okay, you all have the same technology platform, I believe.
Yeah, we are in Finacle.
So will it be easy to merge Treasury then?
Not immediately. Again, this depends on the timeline, what we set for the future course of action.
Okay, so when is your board meeting?
In next 10 days, I have to update all the board members, then take a call on that.
Okay. Do you expect your employees to be happy with this proposal? Would you expect...
See, basically, Vijaya Bank is a very strong bank, and so does Bank of Baroda. So the merged entity also will be strong enough to take care of employees' benefits as well as the need for all the customers.
Dena will require capital, isn't it? They are struggling with a 23%
So, you might have
GNP.
seen the presentation. The combined entity at present stage also will have a better capital adequacy. And government also said they will consider appropriate capital.
That's what I was going to ask you. Were you promised more capital?
It will, definitely, for growth.
You will be promised more capital. You will be
For
given
growth.
more capital.
Growth capital, definitely we will be getting.
Okay. But will that be in the current financial year?
These things we have not still thought of, ma'am. Definitely, after discussing with other boards and our counterparts, we will definitely update the course of action.
Shankaran, anything at all discussed in the meeting with the finance minister today with respect to how this merger will
Yeah,
work?
well, we also attended like you in the conference hall, and we were told.
You were informed at the press conference about the merger, sir?
After the press conference.
After the press
Okay,
conference.
so you also learnt about it at the press conference. You're saying that you are a merger candidate.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay. So your first step will be to call the board, or first step will be to call your employees?
Of course.
Sorry, we lost you, sir. Can you repeat that?
Hello.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Start.
Mr. Shankaran, I think we will have to redial. We lost you in the last sentence or so. Mr. Bakshi, do you expect that employee cooperation will be there? Or will there be a lot of doubts in their minds in terms of what your position is? I mean, look at the managing director's position. What will he be in the merged entity? Won't that be a legitimate worry?
I think it will. The merger will take time. It will not happen overnight. They have also not, like Mr. Jaitley said, there's no timeline. It will take a little bit time. There will be a lot of post-merger, what we call PMI, post-merger integration issues, which will need to be sorted out. And they can always, for a bigger entity, they can always find a structure. See, Dena Bank doesn't have an MD at the moment. Vijaya Bank has an MD. Of course, it depends whether the entire thing will take 1 year or it will take 6 months to materialize. And they can find a structure for, they can create a new post within the organization. If they are giving one head to somebody, they can create a senior level post befitting the position of the MD. Those things are, I think, very unclear at the moment. But I think you cannot be sacrificing the larger goals for these things. These things can definitely be worked out.
Yeah, but I would still immediately worry that we don't know how much extra capital is coming. And, Bank of Baroda, while relative to others has a smaller NPA, it's still close to double digits.
No, it doesn't change. See, if you see the merged entity at 5.7%, Dena has 5.4 NPA at the moment. Sorry,
Okay,
Bank of Baroda
net.
5.4.
That's net.
Whatever it is. See, net is what matters. So, the NPA ratio does not getting too adverse. That is where I say intelligently merged selected entity.
The net NPA goes from 4% currently for Vijaya. For the merged entity, it becomes 6.19%. So for BOB,
No,
the net NPA...
Your screen is showing 5.7.
5.7. Sorry.
Compared to 5.4 of Bank of Baroda, which is fine.
Okay.
And the resolutions to IBC and others which are in the offering, I think they will have an impact on the consolidated entity.
Okay.
But no time can be good enough for doing those things. But I'm very happy at the selection of the candidates because Dena Bank, as it was meandering, their leadership was also not there for quite some time. And somehow, I should not be using those words, but it was a fit candidate to be merged.
I guess Dena Bank was always considered the first one that will be merged into a larger bank. And I guess BOB will bring a lot of synergies and therefore cost rationalizations with it.
Yes.
No doubt in that.
Vijaya Bank is a strong bank.
It's a strong bank.
Small bank.
Yes.
But a small bank. It was nationalized in the first spate in 1969.
Yes.
But it has still remained small. So perhaps it needs that fillip of strategy that may come from the consolidated entity to make a stronger footprint.
Fair point. Well, Sanjeev, now we have some numbers. Dena Bank's NPA will go from 5.4% to 5.7% in the merged entity. And its gross NPAs go from 12.5% when last reported to 13.1% in the merged entity. How badly will the investors take it?
So Lata, it's coming at a time when your back is to the wall because of the rupee and the oil part and the bond. And I think it's a very, very long-term excellent move in the sense that, we needed this north, south, east, west. You need consolidation. You need lesser banks. You need more synergies. So in the short run, we've also seen that we've peaked out on NPAs. In fact, some of the power financiers are now saying that they will be write-backs and so on. So let's not take it for the next few days where there can be a knee-jerk reaction. But all these three put together would really definitely make a much stronger bank going forward. And the direction of the FM and the RBI would be very, very positive, given that most of the banks would have gone through the cleansing process. We think 2019-20 will be the changing years for PSU banks going forward.
Okay, so at what price will you buy the Bank of Baroda?
So Lata, let's see the ratio. I think if you get it on a decline, it would be worth buying. There is a marginal increase in NPA, but look at the franchise which you get, and you are also getting the positives of Vijaya Bank, which has a far less NPA. So sum of parts, it seems to be a fair place for the price. I would say.
135 at the moment, and I agree with you that unless you know the merger ratio, you cannot really react. Mr. Gandhi, how would you look at this as maybe a more neutral observer and a regulator? Ultimately, there isn't any additional strength. It is just that the weakness of Dena Bank is being borne by the two strong banks, relatively strong banks, BOB and Vijaya. Why is it such a big reform? Nothing fresh is added anyways.
No, I don't agree with that kind of comment that nothing positive is coming for the merged entity.
No, I'm asking you what is coming at all.
Yeah, that's right. That Bank of Baroda, as of today, its NPA, which is 5.5. Of course, in the merged entity, it becomes 5.7. But look at the Tier 1 capital. That gets increased from 9.27 to 9.32. So that is a good increase, even for Bank of Baroda. That's a positive one. And the other positive one is the branch network almost doubles from 5.5 to 9.5. So that is another big strength into a positive thing for a merged entity. And the regional diversification also happens in that process. So that is that also should be taken into account as a positive side. And the business size increases by 50% from the current 10 lakh crore to almost 15 lakh crores for the merged entity. So that way the greater visibility in the international forum as a stronger and bigger bank. So that definitely gets added. So that's why even in the merged entity, even for Bank of Baroda or for Vijaya Bank, there are positive features to look on. despite taking a weaker bank like Dena Bank.
Mr. Gandhi, you believe the timing of the merger is good right now? I mean, with the banks going through the stress that they're going through right now, is a merger?
As I said, by timing, I agree that in the point that first they have tested with the merger of State Bank of India and its the last year. So relatively, the merger has gone through very smoothly. Not much of a hiccup has been seen. That is so. What is palatable to chew? That's what that's because simultaneously they are not announcing too many mergers. So this year looks like this one merger right now it is. And depending upon further the support that they may get, they may be emboldened to announce another, or that can go into the next year. So that way, the timing wise, I felt right now this is okay.
What, Mr. Bakshi, what about the bandwidth of the managing director to handle this much? As it is, BOB is not a small bank. And then, they have a huge amount of, issues to handle in terms of cases in IBC, one-day defaults that will have to be resolved now because of the Feb circular. A banker's job is like Herculean after the February circular and the amount of resolutions they're going through. A merger headache at that time, will this distract if you are an MD at BOB today?
But the merger of this size of three banks will always have challenges, but they are in no way insurmountable or cause any additional problems because of the timing. See, resolution of sales assets, IBC is a process which is more or less getting established. And I think there will be many accounts which will be common among these three banks. So same one common strategy, common decision can be adopted in that regard. And till the time the merger finally takes place, the management of the three banks anyway are going to be existing and taking care of their branch networks and taking care of their NPAs and decisions. The good thing that will happen is that a lot of synergy may happen vis-a-vis decisions in regard to the accounts in NCLT or in other resolution modes. See, 15,000 branches, which may again, unless new branches are open, may come down by merger of branches over a period of time. I don't think these are too large a number to be managed by a bank. State Bank manages much larger than that. Of course, they have got a structure of LHOs and things like that which has emerged over a period of time. So we also know that we have got MD of Vijaya Bank and their ED and are available and Dena Bank are available during the merger process. I think, and maybe the larger bank may need a different type of structure. Maybe it may need some LHO type of structure and a different type of management. I don't think it's... I don't see that as a major challenge which should hold us back. This is very clear. When two banks will emerge, and we heard a long time back some committee reports which are suggesting 4 banks and 5 banks being merged. That would be a potpourri. That would not have been the right thing to do. This is the right.
This is handleable, you think?
Yeah, it's handleable very much.
Okay. Well, certainly coming from you, we would take that as significant, Mr. Bakshi, since you have been there, done that. We take that point completely. Sanjeev, I'm still worried about how the markets will react to it. Will they see it as reform at all? Or will they now start, beating down any of the other relatively strong banks, like, for instance, Indian Bank, being sure that even they will be made to bear the cross of somebody else's sins?
So like I said, Lata, it's come at a time when banks themselves are going through the zeros of the weak rupee and the bond yield. But like I said, I think markets are mature enough to realize that in the slightly longer term, these are very, very positive and a very bold move, like most of the other participants have suggested. And coming from their experience, I think it can work a lot of culture of synergies going forward.
Okay.
And we know IBC, NCLT, everything is now in the process, in the real realm in the next 6 months to get resolved very positively. And I think that, given that government has given the intent, it will definitely have a lot of positives for all the 4 areas. And, whichever the banks are, there will be a lot of value buying in the weaker ones and, the ones which are going to be the ones which will acquire.
Mr. Bhasin, do stay on. We are also joined by Mr. J.N. Gupta, the former ED, SEBI, who's with us now. Mr. Gupta, you know, if you've heard a lot of the conversation around the merger of the three banks, Bank of Baroda, Vijaya Bank and Dena Bank, your first take, two better performing banks and larger banks now absorbing all the pain in Dena Bank.
Yeah, see, I would say that first of all, it is a very bold move on the part of the government because they say that they're leaving business. But again, the situation is this, that somebody will gain, somebody will lose. But ultimately, long-term benefit will be seen because if you go by logic, there was no need for 23 public sector banks to be there in the first place. They were unnecessarily doing competition. The competition were driving the bad loans and all that nonsense. So if we are on the right path where you need 3 or 4 strong public sector banks, where the competition is healthy competition rather than unhealthy competition.
Yeah, but what is the cleanest way to do it, Mr. Gupta? You would expect that there will be some open offers.
Okay, I say as a governance person, I would certainly want that there should be open offer. But again, if it is done through the scheme of merger, there is no need for open offer. It has to go through the NCLT rule. So I think government will adopt NCLT rule because it is a certainly pure merger. It is not going to be purchase and sale of shares. There is no change of management. So there will be nothing like that. But then again, the issue will be that what will be the exchange ratio and how it will be worked out. So we will have to wait for certain things. But the challenge lies in handling the staff and unions. Because everywhere the unions protest when some merger or demerger happens. So that's the real challenge.
No, but I'm really more worried about financials. Think of the two mergers where public sector banks were involved. State Bank of India, after the merger of its 5 babies, I mean, quarter after quarter, we saw them belching out more NPAs because you just want the kitchen sink. You don't know what is there in their balance sheet. Of course, in this case, Dena is small, but Dena as a ratio of BOB is very much the SBT as a ratio of SBI. So will there be more belching of NPAs as a bigger bank takes over would be one issue. A second memory that you can, if you jog your memory, is when Oriental Bank of Commerce took over Global Trust Bank. I mean, Oriental Bank of Commerce at that time under B.D. Narang was a sterling bank. Oriental Bank never reached the glory it reached. It enjoyed up until 2002, 2003. After the merger, OBC it never reached its previous glory. Your thoughts on that, Mr. Gupta? I mean, I don't know how closely you followed OBC.
Okay. First of all, we are talking of 2 different eras.
Yes. And in both cases, the mother bank didn't do too well after the merger. At least...
I don't think. So first of all, we are talking of 2 eras. In the era when Oriental Bank took over Global Trust Bank, at that time, the transparency which is presently there was not there at all, one. And even after lots of transparency, I feel that the transparency is still so much is to be desired on the transparency. The second thing is there that when such thing happens, it gives you an opportunity to clean up everything because you have someone else to blame. So the idea is that let me clean up everything because I have an opportunity and I can blame on somebody else. So you start with a clean slate. But the problem is the slate can never be clean because it is not that henceforth there will be no NPA, henceforth there will be no frauds. That cycle cannot stop. So that you will always be struggling. But today the situation is that today most of the banks have declared their NPAs. There could be take few percentage here and there everywhere. So the situation from Oriental Bank and Global Trust Bank is a little different. But I would say the challenges will remain, but the direction is right.
Mr. Gupta, if you were to take a bird's eye view of this entire merger, you think the bank the size of Bank of Baroda combined with a well-performing bank like Vijaya Bank could perhaps absorb a larger not so well-performing bank than just a Dena Bank if the intention really is to strengthen the public sector banking system?
Even weaker bank.
Even weaker bank. Could the 2 stronger banks together be able to absorb an even weaker bank than just Dena Bank, which is 1/10 the size and business of a Bank of Baroda?
I would say first, we still do not have the details of the process. But the situation is very clear that as I see, if I'm reading mind of a finance minister, he is going to make it is a banking system where there will be 5 or 6 public sector banks. So he is going to put which A should merge with B or C, which X should merge with Y or Z, something like this.
Okay.
The issue is very simple. As we all know, the Dena Bank is probably in the worst shape.
Okay.
Now, you and I really don't know what will happen, whether they are going to put NPA and park it in some other entity or not.
Yeah.
We really don't. Because what happens going forward, your credit ratio will have to be important.
Yeah.
So if they take out the NPAs and put it in some other place.
No, I don't think that is contemplated at all, sir. There is no bad bank contemplation at all. They are all going to be put into the same merged bank. Clearly, the government has ruled out any bad bank or put into another bank. That is absolutely out of the question.
Not the bad bank. So what I'm saying is this: going forward, see, as a FM or as an individual, you could not have tolerated any bank failure in India, because bank failure will be disastrous for the economy.
Yep.
So government will have to do each and every possible thing so as to keep the banking sector afloat.
Yep.
That is where my thoughts lie.
Okay. No, I take your point on that. But let me just get Mr. Bakshi's view on that. Mr. Bakshi, your memory of OBC taking over Global Trust Bank would be as good as anybody in the system. You know, OBC was a good bank up until 2003, and thereafter we never saw it come back to that glory.
The Global Trust Bank and presently the other public sector banks cannot be compared. It was a bank which was riddled with fraud, which was riddled with
I agree,
NPA,
but it was, 35% NPA. This one is 23% NPA.
No, not only that. The whole culture of Global Trust Bank was so bad. And it was, I think it was not existing for too many years, but right from the beginning, the seeds that was, or the genes given to that bank were pretty bad. And then OBC was almost forced to take it over at that time because you wanted to salvage the banking industry.
Okay.
So that was a pretty bad swallow to be pushed on to OBC. Yeah. And the times are bad. Now that AQR has happened in the banking industry, NPAs are more or less on the surface. RBI has been very stern with the banks and the auditors that you can't afford to hide. Divergences are being looked at very sternly and strongly. So it is reasonable to believe that nobody is playing on the fringes and people have declared or declaring quarter by quarter what is there. So what we see is what we get right now, which was not the case at that time. It was a case where overnight some decision had to be taken to remove a bad apple from the banking industry. Yes, the banks are bad here, not culturally. They are bad. They might have lost strategic direction. They might have NPAs because of climate or environment issue. But there are no fraud which was...
No, I agree with you. I agree with you. I agree with you. I hope not that the bad loans are not because of a fraud or because of big frauds. Well, actually, Mr. Gandhi...
Customers might have done fraud, but bankers were not
complicit. Yes, I take your point. Mr. Gandhi, when you come right down to it, this is a merger dictated by the dominant shareholder. I mean, where is the board in question? At the moment, it's just going to be government dictation and all the boards are just going to, take up the script and only look at administrative issues. That way, this is not the way. Would you really call this a reform? Yes, instead of having 23 banks, having 20 banks is good. But really, this is, otherwise the same old system.
See, any merger, whether it's a commercial entity or pure government entities, the idea can come from any party. It could be either from the executive, it could be from the board members, it could be from shareholders, a dominant shareholder, minority shareholder. One should not be looking at from whom the idea has emanated. See, my point is that here the dominant shareholder has given the preference for it. Naturally, it will get discussed because not only the board, entire shareholding committee, the AGM will have to approve it. So many things are there. So by any alternate opinion, it will get definitely expressed. There are any number of opportunities for them to express their views.
Yep.
So I don't think that just because a dominant shareholder proposes the move, that should be seen as a negative part. Rather, it should be
I think there is a qualitative. All I was suggesting is there is a qualitative difference when two private banks merge or when two private entities merge. Their boards have gone through the process and they have arrived at an independent assessment.
So,
whereas here,
also,
this looks more like a Soviet-style merger. Let's face it.
Lata, 1 minute. By the 4 years before, during the Sangam discussion, it has been proposed that the banks should come back with their own ideas of consolidation. And this time also, the banks, boards have been asked various types of models which they would like to have as a consolidation. So the names have been finally picked up by this alternate mechanism of the group of ministers.
Yes.
But the ideas and the various alternatives, I would presume that it has come from the respective boards themselves.
I don't know. Mr. Shankaran clearly said he heard about it in the press conference, like all of us heard.
He said about the name, but all the boards earlier, all of you covered the government had asked the boards to send the proposal in the year.
Sure, sir, but the board, the majority shareholder of all of these banks is the government at the end of the day.
To the extent of 80%.
Yes, sir. But do stay on with us, sir. We also have Mr. V.G. Kannan, the CEO of Indian Banks Association, who joins us now, sir. Thank you for joining in. You've seen SBI go through a mega merger. Now we know these three banks, Vijaya Bank, Bank of Baroda and Dena Bank are being merged. First, your thoughts. What do you see as the big opportunities and challenges of this merger?
First thing, I think it's a good step. Some time ago, 2-3 years ago, I think, there was a discussion on the mergers, the need for having 3 to 4 large global banks which can compete in the international market, and it will also have a large capital, large risk-bearing capacity. So that being the scenario, having too many banks, in fact, to be precise, 20 banks in the public sector didn't really make sense. But whatever be the reason, we have been continuing. And this step of getting one single bank, merging two pretty strong banks and one relatively weaker bank could actually be the first step for the consolidation and the merger. Will have its own advantages. Sometime down the line, it cannot happen that overnight. But 6 months to 1 year down the line, I think there are strengths for each of the banks and there are weaknesses of some of the banks. And I think overall, they will come out stronger.
Okay. Well, at the moment, we are just running the total capital. I think we should pull up the capital graph once again. Vijaya Bank investor shouldn't complain because his tier 1 capital actually goes up
after
from 9.2 to 9.3. It's only the Vijaya Bank investor who will find a 1 percentage point, 100 basis point fall in its tier 1 capital. Dena, of course, will be advantaged, probably even come out of PCA because of this merger, because the overall net NPA comes down to 5.7 from the current 11.7. 11% that it is. So Dena Bank investor is happiest and Vijaya Bank investor would be the most negatively impacted because of this merger. But of course, a lot will depend on the ratio that is being considered. Actually, when you come right down to it, that you don't have 23 banks but only 20 banks is the reform. Otherwise, there is precious little. Actually, come to think of it, Mr. Kannan, will this merger in any way reduce the problem of personnel in banks? The public sector banks, other than SBI, I'm not counting that as a PSU, the public sector banks have this huge missing middle. With this merger, is either the quantity or the quality of personnel any better?
See, that's a different matter regarding the quality of the personnel. I think we have the Bank Board Bureau, which is trying to work on leadership and development. So that is a step separately being taken. But purely from the financial point of view, since it's a single platform, as also the fact that it will become a very large bank, will enable them to take very bold decisions and also take large exposures. Today, what happens, 3 different banks take different exposures and have different terms and conditions, and sometimes someone follows the leader without understanding the implications. A single bank could possibly take a much more, conscious and
decision, which will be certainly in the interest of the banking industry as also in the interest of the industrialists who wouldn't have to deal with 3 banks now, we'll have to deal with 1 bank.
No, certainly that advantage is clearly there. Mr. Bakshi, I wanted your view on that. You know, this big missing middle in public sector banks, the merger is not really going to solve a quality or a quantity problem, or can it?
Are you talking of the HR?
HR, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, see, that problem definitely has been there, but all banks, I think I know about Bank of Baroda and others who have been trying to, now there have been continuous induction of new people, there have been lateral inductions also, and there have been faster promotions to bridge that gap. So that gap, standalone also would have been there to the extent it is there. In a merged entity, if they are able to really synergize the various type of skill levels, skill sets that are available, and use them. For example, risk management, for example, IT, for example, treasury, for example, marketing, are functions which can be very much consolidated at one place. You don't have to have only branches and zonal offices, or at the field level is where you need amplified number of people. But there are many functions in the bank which can be very well consolidated. The best of people from all.
So to some extent, the HR problem is solved.
Gets handled, mitigated to some extent.
To some extent. Mr. Kannan, if we could bring you back on one more question again. You know, you've seen the current crop of banks, public sector banks. 11 of them are currently under PCA. You think these 3 were the ideal candidates for consolidation at this point of time? Or could, you know, 2 stronger banks like Bank of Baroda and Vijaya Bank subsume a much weaker or a, you know, larger, weaker bank?
See, in the past also discussions were going around as to how to go about the merger. There was a thought regarding going by balance sheet size, say having some 2 or 3 banks with a particular balance sheet size. Second was on the basis of the technology platform, which makes things a bit easier for merger, because a single platform doesn't mean that means that we don't have to shift everything. And third one was on regional basis. Should we have one north, one east, one west, and one south bank to be merged to make?
So does this tick all the 3 boxes, sir?
No, but this particular time, I think, you know, rightly so, the easiest way is to merge banks with a similar platform. And one. Second thing is, Dena Bank is a weak bank, I do agree. But having getting merged with 2 stronger banks, otherwise you're going to have 2 stronger banks merged and they're going to kill the third bank, which we cannot do. They have their own set of customers, their own loyal customers who have been with the bank so long.
No, sir. My question was
in the retail field.
My question was, would a larger but weaker, weaker than Dena Bank be merged with the 2 stronger banks instead of just a smaller bank like Dena Bank, which is, 1/10 the business of a large bank like Bank of Baroda?
You'll also have to understand one of the reasons they must have chosen is a bank which also has a similar platform. Maybe having a couple of other banks, but whether they fit the bill, I think they must have made some combination and found that Dena Bank probably fits the bill much more to be absorbed in these 2 other 2 banks.
Okay. Well, we are, of course, discussing all this as citizens. Tomorrow, the BOB investor and the Vijaya Bank investor will vote as investors. And I guess they'll be extremely sorry they bought both these banks when they bought them because they are going to carry the cross, which perhaps the government has to carry, or citizens have to carry, or taxpayers have to carry. Instead of that, the minority shareholders of BOB and Vijaya are going to bear this cross. Anyone who chose Vijaya Bank, chose to buy it yesterday, day before, last year, last month, was perhaps not aware that he's going to be bearing this cross. And therefore, he's not going to be a happy guy, for sure. Much as we may say that for the government, this was a better option than having perhaps 23 banks. That clearly is something which the stock markets will vote on tomorrow. And I don't think it'll only be the investors of BOB and Vijaya who will, express their displeasure. The shareholders of Indian Bank will express their displeasure.
Banks at large.
Any of the public sector banks which have even a slightly better than average NPA are going to be worried. And I think you will see a sell-off, not just in BOB and Vijaya, but you're going to see a sell-off in any bank that is somewhat better off than the average. So Indian Bank definitely comes to the mind. I don't think they're going to be very happy in terms of how they might be treated
or Bank of India, or some of the other larger public sector banks as well. Given that these three banks did not know up until this press conference.
Or maybe there'll be a relief rally that at least it won't happen for the next 6 months, because the government will want to know how this merger goes on. So probably there will even be a relief rally in Indian banks, since it is not the chosen one that has to bear the cross. Well, we'll have to wait and see how markets react. As somebody was pointing out to me on SMS, if a private sector, conglomerate was making its healthy unit to take on the woes of its weaker unit, I don't think the stock market would have rewarded that promoter. So, looked at from a minority shareholder's angle, this is going to be heartburn. A lot of them piled on into Bank of Baroda and even Vijaya Bank after the numbers, because the numbers were good. Some of them may regret or perhaps even leave.
And I'd say, Mr. Jaikumar might perhaps reconsider his extension of 2 years.
I don't think he's in a bad spot.
Yes. Anyway, we're completely timed out on the show, though. All of our guests on the show, thank you very much for joining in. But do stay tuned with CNBC-TV18. We'll come back with more news and updates.